Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back to another episode of What's in a Performance, where today we're going to be taking a look at a 20th century pianist by the name of Rudolf Serkin, performing Beethoven Sonata No. 30. Now, Serkin is a pianist that I don't think I've heard very many people mention before, but growing up when I was learning Beethoven's third piano concerto, I listened to his CD of his performance on repeat. And the CD also had his performance of the fifth piano concerto, and I thought that was fantastic as well. And so I thought it'd be nice to do a review on Serkin, since I view him as a pianist who maybe had a little bit more influence on how I played throughout middle and high school. And also, my piano teacher throughout high school knew him at some point. So that's kind of cool. But with all that being said, let's get right to the review. Real quick, if you're enjoying the content and finding it helpful, I've made something else for you too that can help you improve at your piano playing. And that is a guide on how to practice. Too often we just think about the techniques and the things that we need to do and achieve and accomplish and learn, but we don't think quite enough about how to implement that into our practice to make it effective and something that's ingrained as an ability. And so go to the link in my description down below. And while you're down there, and if you need a little bit more help, do check out my private lessons as well. And let's get right back to the video. All right, we're all set up. Now let's review one of the greats of the 20th century who we don't talk enough about, IMO. Certainly seems like it's a later part of his life. I think 1987 or so. What I love about that opening is that one, it's not too fast. He's using very little pedal, right? But he's connecting very well, and you hear the voicing on the notes. Very beautiful. So immediately almost we get in this sonata like a section that comes straight out of a second movement, a typical second movement that Beethoven would write, where we get these intricate voices that have to come together. And what I really love about the way that you can see Serkin playing is that he leans a lot forward into the keys to bring out those notes. We've talked a lot about arm weight and body weight before, and one of the things that I repeatedly mention is when you're playing chords and you want to voice a certain note, what you want to do is you want to feel the weight on your hand shift towards that finger that's playing the melody. So if we're looking at this measure, for example, with where the left hand is, so you'll see him lean forward. You see a little bit of that bounce from his hand, right, as he pushes in a little bit on each note to bring out that sort of crescendo. But he feels it in these upper fingers where it's coming through. And even when there's like now multiple notes that he has to play, the weight is still concentrated on those top fingers to bring those notes through. And same thing for his right hand. He's feeling it on the top notes. And that's what makes Beethoven and these sorts of like slower movements pretty difficult, or slower sections, right, in this case. Very nice. What I really enjoy about something like this in Beethoven compared to Chopin is that a lot of the times in something that's more romantic, you'll hear all these notes come in almost like a quick rush. You'll play very much so as though everything was in one continuous movement. And we've talked about that in videos before, how we want to group things into like singular motions. But the beauty of Beethoven, I think, is even through that, you're getting like a degree of shimmer on each note individually, and that comes from lifting the fingers. So instead of just feeling like my hand flow down the keyboard in one giant motion for this arpeggio, right, and I end up at the bottom, what I instead do is I still lift my fingers, so it adds a little bit layer of texture, which is what Serkin is doing here. And of course, towards the end, a little bit slower. Very nice. My ear is drawn to the left hand as I'm supposed to be. And now it's to the right. The same comments about voicing that we made earlier. And I'd also note how close his hand is sticking to the keyboard. Right? We're playing a little bit softer right now, but very legato. And so because he's sticking close to the keyboard, it gives a glued texture to everything. So not only isn't more connected, but also he can afford to pedal less, which helps out the texture in Beethoven as well. Notice how the left hand doesn't get that much louder, whereas the right hand is continually pushing a little bit. This is one way of controlling the dynamics. Both hands don't necessarily have to get louder simultaneously. And now he opens up the tone. Back to the slow section. Left hand there, right? A little bit da da ba 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 ba. Ooh, that phrasing. Very sudden. Right, but I want to take a listen to this phrasing again. It's so delicate. And it matches the part that comes right before, right? Very measured counting of the notes right there, right? Because Beethoven has this written out specifically. This is almost like a mathematical accelerando, or like a speeding up that you can feel in the way that it's being played when it's like on beat, which is lends itself to having a certain charm. And the left hand again. Notice also how he's pedaling a little bit more now than at the beginning. And again, one of the reasons for that is because Beethoven wanted to sound a little bit more dry, because the pedal wasn't as strong. But when you're playing in the upper registers, the sound tends to not linger as long. So you can get away with a little bit more pedal. And it creates a little bit more of a delicate sort of shimmer. So when you have notes lower in the register, consider using less pedal, because if you add pedal, it'll sound very muddy and very thick. But when you're higher up, you can introduce a little bit more pedal for a little bit of shimmer and use that as a tool for texture as opposed to just connecting. We talk about in one of our pedaling videos in the past. You can hear that getting a little bit heavier. It's like almost you can feel like a little bit of like weight being pushed into the keys, but not too much, not too much. It's still Beethoven after all. You can see his mouth moving. It actually is pretty interesting. It's a funny story that my teacher told me once, and I don't know how true it is. So if any of you actually know, please let me know down in the comments below. But apparently Serkin, when he played, would sing the melody as he played it to help himself phrase. Jokingly, my teacher said that people wouldn't want to sit in the front row because he would sing out of tune and it would clash with what he was playing if you could hear it. But I think it's interesting because you can see him doing that right here. If he's not singing the melody, or if maybe he's not singing the whole time, but very clearly, bum ba da ba 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 bum. Right, he's helping himself phrase, and I think it's one of these things where I've talked about it previously in videos. But watching Serkin play and listening to him play, and of course, again, being instructed by my teacher, is one of the reasons why I stress so much. If you want to learn how to phrase, start by humming it or singing it. I think there's like a certain barrier to being able to phrase on an instrument because it's a medium that we're not familiar with for expressing ourselves. But we're very used to using our voices to convey meaning, whether that's when we're upset and we're raising our voice, or whether that's when we're like very happy and then our voice maybe gets a little bit higher pitched or whatever. We're used to using our voices to convey our emotions. And I think even someone who's relatively untrained or doesn't have much of an ear, even with singing, you can feel that a little bit more than if you were trying to play an instrument. And so being able to sing and at the very least hear what you're going for first before translating that onto the piano is sometimes very helpful. And for some people, evidently like Serkin, and sometimes even for myself when I'm playing certain melodic passages, singing it somehow just helps me feel it a little bit more. So then when I'm playing, it comes out more too, which is very weird. But he was one of the greats doing it. So don't sit in the front row when you come to a WattKeys concert because I might be singing out of tune. Very delicately. You hear very delicately to just like push in. It's almost like a down, very quick down up, but it's not quite a down up because he has to draw the whole phrase, which gives it an interesting texture. Right. Instead, it crests and curves upwards to the top note. And then all that way is going into, again, the top finger. This very top voice dominant, this way of playing. Because again, the bass doesn't need a lot of help to come out with these sorts of pieces. And now he drops back. Notice that it sounds a lot drier. Right? It's not pedaling too much. And he's releasing the pedal very precisely and very quickly. Notice the two voices, how he brings them out. It's almost like a Bach convention at this point, right? We have two voices. And it ends breath. And there's almost like this cycle going on because this comes up and it goes down. Just as this top voice starts high. And then now this is higher in volume because it's the beginning of the phrase. And I'm doing this with two hands, right? And there's like almost this like cyclical nature to it. But doing it with one hand is very important to feel very precisely where the weight is going in your arm, into your hand, and which fingers are feeling heavy, right? So if I'm doing it with one hand, right, and then I'll get to this note, I'm feeling it lean towards this side of my hand more into my pinky, right? But I need to still feel a little bit of pressure on these fingers loosening up, so then I get the right, almost like a down up, and I can still do that motion. And then same thing now for top, and I feel the weight shift to the bottom part of my hand towards my thumb. And then whatever fingering I choose to take, which for the record I haven't read this piece before, so I don't know what I would take, but then I feel the weight come away from my pinky into the bottom part of my hand, and then we continue. And we get this very beautiful phrasing that you hear Serkin do right here, very well. And he loosens up very nicely too. It's a little bit more connected than the previous movement, which is very cool. And these sorts of Beethoven things. Strong connecting. Notice he's holding the pedal a little bit more there too, right? In the previous movement, he would have released a little bit quicker, but he's holding it a little bit longer to give it a little bit more ring. Back to the original theme. And it sounds a little bit unicorda-like to me. And now it's lifted. And this is a section that you can hear from the way that he's lifting the fingers, right? And playing with primarily fingers. Right, and there's a little bit more finger action to it, despite him not lifting the fingers a lot. Right, there's a very controlled, like, overall weight of the arm so that it's, like, at the dynamic that he wants. Right, so a little bit weighty. But overall, a lot of the action is coming straight from the fingers. Right hand with the melody, there's a little bit more arm weight, as with most things. Still singing. Increasing weight. And not much of a ritornado at the very end, because Beethoven writes it out for us. Right, and release. That was Rudolf Serkin performing the first two movements to Beethoven's Sonata No. 30. Third movement is a very long one with variations, so I'll refrain from reviewing that at the moment. But yeah, it was very pleasant to listen to Serkin again, simply because I mean, he was such an integral part of shaping me as a Beethoven player. And if you haven't heard of him before, go check out some of the videos that you can find of him playing on YouTube. But also, if you enjoyed this video, I'm sure you'll enjoy my Discord because you get to talk with me and other people in my community about piano and really anything else. So go check out the link down in the description below and check out the description for a whole bunch of links to other things that will be interesting to you as well. And if you liked watching me talk about Serkin played piano, you'll probably enjoy watching me talk about one of these other people too. So I'll see you over there. Until next time, peace.